right, everybody. So today on the podcast, we have Coach Paris Butler, also known as Bald Omni-man. How you doing, man?
So far, so good. How are y'all doing?
Doing well, man. So I had seen you, I think, largely in the comment section for a while, on a lot of like the same people that I'm sure the guests know. And then I saw you on Instagram. And then, sometimes people will mention, oh, you got to get this guy on the podcast. And your name popped up several times. And we had never really interacted. I had just seen you. I'm sure at some point you commented on my videos, but I've also seen you on Jeffrey Verdi Schofield and whatnot. So I know who Omni-man is, but where did that name come from?
I'm going to be completely honest with you. I was watching the Amazon Prime Invincible show, and I'm bald, right? But we were watching it, me and my woman, and she was like, "You kind of look like Omni-man." At the time, I had a mustache. So I'm like, So then I Googled Bald Omni-man, just because you're weird and you Google stuff sometimes. And there was literally a Bald Omni-man picture. I'm like, okay, I'm going to use this. And then I kind of just let the ball roll after that one.
Yeah, no, that's hilarious. So, I mean, have you watched the show then? You saw the first season?
Absolutely. So I actually read the comic series to completion before.
Oh, wow.
So I'm a fan of the series. I checked out the animated series just to see if it was good. It's actually better than the source comic up till the point that they covered. So
really? Okay.
Yeah.
Are you into anime and whatnot in general, or was it just that show?
I would say I'm more of a fan of just fictional works in general. So depending upon the medium, I guess you could say, I could read a book if I'm interested in it. I could read a comic book. I could watch an animated series. I could watch anime. I'm really just a big fan of stories and character development, world building, and everything surrounding that. So
are you a Marvel fan?
Are you a Marvel fan?
I am a Marvel fan. It sounds like you're not.
No, I am. I'm just making sure that you're cool, because I don't like to be divisive. Some people are really gung ho on DC, and I just wanted to make sure you were a Marvel fan too.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm a fan largely because of the whole world building aspect. I do like that, kind of getting sucked into things. Although now Marvel's at the point where if you haven't watched like all 22 plus movies, you get kind of lost. Like I'll see a new movie and it's like, I'm thinking if you haven't seen like 4 other movies or even like the television series, you wouldn't really get totally what's going on here. Like maybe you'd still enjoy the movie, but you wouldn't really know all the details, So I think that's one problem they're kind of having with it.
I think that's a big reason why people weren't very happy with the new Doctor Strange movie, because it's kind of like the start of a new saga. So it's like they spent all this time building up the cinematic universe to culminate with the Thanos storyline. Yeah. And now we're starting over again. So
yeah. After that ended with Thanos, it's kind of like I don't know where they're gonna go with that. But the Omni-Man, I guess it's called Invincible, and then The Boys came out at like a similar time, right? I think they're in season 3 now, which kind of similar principle of like, real world superheroes kind of gone bad in a sense.
Yeah. I mean, The Boys, I would say, is more of a twisted take on it than Invincible almost. Yeah. Invincible, it plays a lot of the superhero show tropes straight, but it subverts some of them. Yeah. The Boys is like a complete
constant. Yeah.
Yeah. Not to spoil anything for anyone that's interested in it, but it's quite a ride.
Right. So let's get into your background with lifting, because obviously I'm just pulling up your Instagram right now. You got 9,000 on there. I think your YouTube has blown up quite a bit, right?
Yeah, in the last couple months or so.
Yeah, so you are at, let's see, 28.5 thousand. And I don't know where you were a year ago. When did you start the channel?
About a year ago. I had literally a year ago less than 100 subscribers.
Wow. Okay. So what do you attribute your growth to?
A few different things. So first and foremost, I like to be consistent with what I do. I post, I tried 3 or 4 times a week. Lately, I've kind of been more 2 times a week, but I'm getting better with it again now. As well, just being friendly and being positive. I feel like that's brought me the opportunity to, rub shoulders with people that have helped promote my platform. Yeah. And, just time and patience. I'm really into RPGs. So I kind of view it as like when you play an RPG and you're looking for like a particular piece of loot, you have to level grind for it. I enjoy that aspect of, gameplay and RPG. So I kind of view it that way.
Is it something that, I don't know if you offer, well, obviously you're with your name, Coach Paris Butler, you do coach. Is that something that you're primarily doing, or is this kind of a side gig that's slowly becoming more and more for you?
In terms of the online aspect of it, I would say it definitely started off as more of just something like, hey, I coach online. Here's what I do. And now it's, a legit source of income.
Nice.
Definitely, which I'm very fortunate for, very thankful for as well. I work with a lot of cool people.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. And like, you could technically, like, I'm sure as you coach more people, you become a better coach, but really you could not be any better of a coach than you were, let's say, a year or two ago. And this happened to me too. I was helping people for a long time, but just by having a platform, all of a sudden you got triple the people, or, even more than that, which is just like the name of the game. Obviously, if your name is out there, more and more people are going to connect with you. But I think also you're kind of in that space from what I've seen of like Jeffrey Verdi Schofield, natural hypertrophy. Like it seems like you guys are all kind of in that same world there. And I could see why you would then grow in tandem with them. Like Jeffrey has grown a lot in the last 2 years. I would say I've seen him more and more. Same thing with natural hypertrophy.
Yeah, I'm really, really proud of what Jeffrey does in particular. He puts out a lot of great information. Natural hypertrophy does too, as well. His growth is just so crazy to look at. I get more excited looking at other people get better than myself sometimes, just because, like I said, I get so engrossed in the process. I pick up my head and I have 28,000 subscribers. Whereas, if I'm viewing like a colleague's growth, I'm like, dude, you gained like 10,000 subscribers this month.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it is cool to see. And I like it because it's like, these are people who I would say could easily have not grown given the typical fitness space. Like there are people who I think are putting out good information where it's like, okay. And even if there are some things I don't agree with, I still think if you follow what they're espousing, you're going to get, 95% of your goal or whatever it is. And a lot of the people that really blow up, like maybe like Greg Doucette or some of these other people, like there's a lot more gimmick involved, in my opinion. And obviously, like if you took the average person, they follow what Greg Doucette said, they'd still progress. So I'm not trying to say that like they wouldn't progress, but I find that those that we mentioned in particular, they do have a message where they can motivate people to progress over the long term. They have the I guess like the big principles in place, which is nice to see somebody like that growing rather than just like, hey, here's this flashy thing.
Absolutely. I kind of came into that conundrum myself, where I found myself starting to gravitate more into content that's like super highly edited. And I just came to a point where like, I don't like doing this. And this isn't how I built my platform to begin with, So there really is that dichotomy with fitness content. On one hand, you have the really edited, really fast food fitness type of guys, which is, far be it for me to take money out of anyone's bag or say that that's a wrong way to go about it. But there's a different style and different flavor that you get with those two types of content. I would say that I am more in the substantive type of camp myself, where more long form content, my own flavor of content that I make that's original as well. But I would say I'm definitely more on this side than that side.
Yeah. And really, there's a big blend. I mean, I know some channels who, like there's a guy, Chael Sonnen, who's big in MMA, and he just hit 1 million subscribers. And a lot of that growth is not just because of him. A lot of it is because UFC has blown up so much that he hasn't grown with it. But nevertheless, he literally gets on, doesn't seem to do any editing, and just talks, right? I'd say Jeffrey he does editing, but it's not like he's doing like super high quality editing. Like I think it's funny what he like puts in there, but it's not like super high level. And then you got like a Jeff Nippard where he has a ton of editing that goes into it, but I still wouldn't say it's flashy. Like it's still like a reasonable tone, reasonable pace of speaking, just highly edited in a good way. And then of course, I guess on the extreme, you've got like a Greg Doucette where it's just like bam, 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 and things like that. So as you said, not that one is necessarily wrong, but obviously there's a type that we prefer to consume and to put out.
Absolutely. And I'm someone where if I don't enjoy what I do, full disclosure, if I feel like I'm working, I'm a very lazy individual, just to put it out there. If I feel like, oh, I got to clock into YouTube and make these 2 videos this week. I'm not going to want to do it. So I'm definitely very much someone that has to enjoy what I do. And I really enjoy doing what I like to do. And that's, pull up my phone, start talking into the camera. I might put in some edits if I'm motivated to.
Yeah.
But if not, it's more so my heart and what I want people to be able to get out of my content that I'm concerned with mostly. And that's giving freely, making sure people have the tools to help themselves and not spend any money if they don't have to. One of my most popular videos is a completely unedited 2-hour-long PowerPoint, which is a self-coaching video.
Wow.
It blew up. I posted it recently. I think it's up to 250,000 views.
Holy crap.
So fully time-stamped. It's a self-coaching video. It covers a variety of concepts. Anyone watching this, if you're interested, you can check it out. I'm not plugging it, but it is a good resource.
Is that the one with the berserk method, everything you need to coach yourself?
Yes.
Yeah, wow. You got, so that one's got 155,000. Incline bench doesn't work your pec says 227,000. Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting to me how you get, like, I guess I have the occasional video that does significantly better than others, but for the most part, it's like pretty constant. But I will see on some of these channels where it's just like, boom, like 1 or 2. I saw one, like not related to fitness, but the other day I saw one that had 1.7 million views. And then everything else on this person's channel had like a couple hundred. Like somehow the algorithm picked it up and just boom. And then nothing else ever since then. It's very strange.
The algorithm is a fickle mistress.
Yeah.
It's, I posted a video of me doing barbell rows once. I think that did really well, just randomly. It was like a 20-second clip of me doing barbell rows. Got hundreds of thousands of views. I'm like, dude, how? I didn't even mean for that.
Yeah. And especially, I mean, nowadays it's even harder. Like I had a YouTube channel just for my own, just to post stuff, like for my own form videos back in high school. Mm-hmm. And there was one where it was like a guillotine press. And I guess because it's not a very popular exercise, when you search it, there's only so many results that come up. So this video, again, this was like 2009 or something. And it's got, I think, like 10, 20,000 views on like a completely random channel that I had of nothing. And it's got more views than like most of my own videos, Same thing. I got one of like it's like Italian grandmother reacts to tattoo. And it's like my brother pretending he had a tattoo and my grandmother freaking out or something. And so that video has got like 20,000 views and it's like,
that's super fascinating. I would love to, sit down and talk to one of those YouTube scientists that created the algorithm. Like, how does this happen?
Yeah, I know. Maybe bribe them a little bit too. So what would you say your message is? I mean, we kind of talked about it a little bit, but is there like, one of the things like I talk about, obviously I talk about genetics a lot, but I also talk about, I think, sustainability and doing this for a long time, not beating yourself up if you don't necessarily get the best results right away. Would you say that you have a certain message that kind of comprises your ethos on this space?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, like I touched upon a little bit before, I really like for the people that encounter my channel to know that they have the access to the tools to be self-sufficient. I guess you could say that's the core theme and value of my channel is self-sufficiency. I almost like to compare it to, this is something I say quite often, honestly, compare it to a teacher in school. At some point, you're not going to need your teacher. I think a lot of times we look towards YouTube channels or celebrities or people whose work that we enjoy and think that because we enjoy them as a person and enjoy their work, that we always have to consume that work as well. I'm someone where I say my goal is for you to not need me one day. And that even extends over to like the people I work with, that I coach, that I train. My goal is for you to know enough to where you don't need my help anymore. So I would say that's my first value, because with that, when you have self-sufficiency, you have freedom. You have freedom to explore. You have freedom to put more mental acuity into other tasks that could be more important to you. And just knowing that you know what you're doing as well is a freeing feeling as well. That's my biggest thing. On top of that, I just like to have fun. Like if you go on my channel, something I just posted was I saw Kyriakos Grizzly post this GTA edit. And I'm like, I like that song. It was from GTA 3, San Andreas. So I put that song on some of my training clips, you know, so just to be goofy and funny. I like doing that as well. I really like the educational piece as well. One of my favorite types of videos to make is the whiteboard videos. People in my comments call it the legendary relic, the whiteboard, because it's like they get so hyped when I pull it out. But I really like breaking things down as well. And then I guess you could say I'm a bit of a training savant. I get really excited talking about it and showing people stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So like diving into the training, I mean, you obviously have built an impressive physique. I'm not sure in terms of your strength numbers. I see you, I mean, it looks like pretty damn strong. So I'm seeing here like 280 for 7 close grip bars and press, 300 seal row, and you're about 175 pounds.
COVID nerfed me, so I'm currently 176 pounds. But beforehand, I was 185. But some of my best lifts are a 370-pound paused Larson press. It was about a year ago. I've done a 315 seal row. In terms of hip hinges, Pete Rubish popularized a type of back extension. I've done, I think, 335 or 345 pounds on that.
Okay.
I recently have done a 515-pound stiff leg deadlift.
Wow.
250 front squat for 16 reps, 225 for 21, 4-plate weighted pull up. Just to name a few.
225 for 20 front squat, you said?
Yes.
Nice.
Just to name a few.
Yeah.
Those are just a few that I've done recently.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. You're making me think about getting back into front squat. I used to be, it's weird. My front squat was so much more impressive than my back squat was relatively. It was never great. I'm trying to think when I was probably about 180 at the time because it's been a long time since I've done. I did 225 for 16 front squat, which was hell. I mean, high rep front squats, as obviously you know, are just
brutal,
the worst, man. They're just getting choked out basically the whole time. But yeah, my back squat was never anything fantastic. But I mean, all of those across the board. I mean, you seem pretty, like you're well developed around it. You're well rounded, I should say, because all of those are impressive. And even, I mean, physique wise, you look great. Have you ever considered competing?
See, I'm someone where the interest is definitely there. I would just have to map out the logistics of it. Like, what would it really take? Because I've never competed in any physique sports or powerlifting or anything before like that.
I mean, your numbers for 175. I mean, so I don't know what you would compete at, but I mean, it's not like you'd be like winning nationals, but you do well.
Maybe I'll give it some thought. Maybe this is the sign that I'll, go ahead and take that first step into that journey. But I appreciate the praise. I'm 5'11" to help put those numbers into context for you. You know more about bodybuilding than I do. I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, 5'11", 170. I mean, you're pretty lean. So, and it just depends on like the level that you're competing at. I mean, looking at some of these pictures, I'm actually surprised given how big you look for only being like 175, 180. I would have guessed you were like 5'8", just meaning that you look pretty damn big. Mm-hmm. So I would think I would have thought 5'11" at 176 or 180 would have looked thinner. But again, just because you're lean, that's great, man. And it's also when you get on stage, like it just everything kind of changes in terms of and I haven't competed, but I'm just saying like being around like competitors and everything and seeing it, it's kind of shocking sometimes. You'll see somebody and they sound like they're so light, but with a pump and the right lighting and the tan, it can look good. And then obviously there's also like men's physique and things like that as well. So
I'll have to take a look into that.
Yeah. So as far as you mentioned, you're doing more with training clients now. I know a lot of people will kind of start and they'll say, okay, I'm going to have a completely individualized plan for people. Other people will say, okay, I'm just going to start somebody on a sound program and then we're going to adjust from there. I do tend to go more in the realm of like individualized, but I will say I think both are totally fine because ultimately to me, the biggest thing with coaching is the adjustments that you make along the way. Right. It's not like a special routine. At least that's how I feel about it. So would you say that when you have clients, is it like, okay, everybody's completely different, or it's like, we're going to start at a general baseline and then you kind of make variations from there?
Well, to answer that, I definitely have a style of programming, I would say, but that in terms of how it gets applied to the individual just depends upon the individual and what, how many days they can go to the gym, what have they responded best to in the past in terms of frequency, volume, things like that. Have they trained at all? That could really vary. So specifically, I would say that in terms of who I'm coaching right now, they all have programs that are vastly different from one another. But for example, something that I like to program in terms of making sure that rep quality is really good for like squat motion patterns, for example, is front squats. So most of them are doing front squats in some capacity, depending upon, if they're powerlifting or, just training for holistic purposes. Because what I find with front squats and why I love them so much is that because you have to have a good front rack position, if you can't keep that upright positioning that makes the squat very quad dominant, knees over toes, you lose the bar. And for people that are very hip dominant, which means your knees don't go over your toes very much, to put it simply, for that type of individual, it can make your squat squattier. So for people that have a desire to have a squattier squat, that's typically something that I put in there.
Yeah.
For example.
Okay. In terms of, I know we see huge variations in terms of the amount of volume and frequency that people are prescribing. Like Jeff and natural hypertrophy both have pretty high volume. I mean, natural hypertrophy is doing, I think he said 6 days a week, like 2 to 3 hour workouts. Jeffrey is doing like 20 to 30 sets per body part, it seems like. So where do you fall in that?
I would say personally, I'm someone where I tend to look at the whole volume versus intensity conversation from a more nuanced perspective, just because I realize that high volume for me and high volume for someone else may be different. Sure. 20 sets for me, it's way too much. But for more than one person that I train, that's like not even scratching what they're capable of or what they need to grow, for example. So yeah, I'm more of in the camp of do what the person needs and kind of go based off of that. I ascribe to certain things. Like I have opinions with strength and conditioning for sure, but things like that, like volume prescriptions, I'm not doing my due diligence, I feel, if I'm not making that individual based upon the person. For me personally, I don't like high volume.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like high volume, and it's not, I mean, I've tried it many, many times. I never personally got much out of it, and I've done it concurrently, meaning I've been, okay, this body part is going to get high volume and other things are going to get lower volume. And they kind of progress at the same rate. Like it just wasn't that, it wasn't like it didn't work. It just didn't work for me better than lower volume. So I don't know if you've tried it and just found like you felt worse, or if it was just not necessary for you.
I've found that what it does very well, what I can give credit to it for, is that it makes my conditioning very, very good. If I'm cutting and I'm on a high volume program, it obviously burns more calories. But in terms of extra hypertrophy or strength adaptation, I don't feel as though past maybe 15 sets at the most per week, and I'll undulate between like 10 and 15 sets per week. Anything higher than that, for me, I don't get a good return, hypertrophy or strength wise, personally.
Yeah. Have you found a similar trend with clients? I mean, I know you said there's pretty variation, but would you say, because I mean, I find that in this evidence-based space, as much as we have some studies showing super high volume, most people do end up kind of gravitating back to that 10 to 15 sets per week. I even go a little bit lower than that personally, but it sounds like, would you say for most of your clients, that's where you end up?
I would say the average person in general kind of falls in between that 10 to 15 per week figure. Now it's interesting because I do train someone, Sam Sheether, exotically strong individual, him and his younger brother. I think Max just put together a 2,000 pound competition total at 19, completely natural. Yeah, drug tested. And Sam himself is a strong man. And it's interesting because with his training, he doesn't use the amount of volume that you think someone who deadlifts in the 800s would and bench presses in the 500s would. It's actually quite low compared to what you would think. So as much as I'd love to give like a, broad answer for that. It really, as you continue to work with people, you would be very surprised to see that it really does just depend.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think the individuality there is always fascinating to me, just in terms of response to different training variables or nutrition. I don't know if you get too much into nutrition variables with your clients, or do you kind of just say like, all right, eat enough protein and don't worry too much about the rest?
That's an interesting question. So, in terms of nutritional advice, I tend to just to give general advice that is, true for everyone. If you want to get bigger, you need to tend to eat in a surplus, or at least at maintenance calories. And if you want to lose weight, you eat less than that. But I've kind of shied away from giving specific nutritional advice outside of like, make sure you're hydrating, getting your electrolytes in so you don't get cramps and stuff, just because I feel that it's a lot more efficacious to refer that out to like a doctor or a nutritionist, just because they can get more specialized advice from them. Yeah. I'm not a nutritionist and I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to give anyone medical advice personally.
Sure. Yeah. At the end of the day, I mean, I find nutrition super interesting from a health standpoint. I find it very interesting, and even from like a bodybuilding perspective, but less so in terms of like, I don't think it's going to make that huge of a difference beyond the basics. Like, I actually do think that with strength training, you can get into some very specific programming, some very specific periodization that, if you're beyond an intermediate, could really make a big difference. For the nutrition, I suppose in a dieting phase, a contest prep phase, things like that, you could really get into the weeds. But if somebody's like, hey, I'm just trying to get as big as strong as possible, if they really want some detailed plan, that's fine. But for the most part, I think if you're eating sufficient protein, about a gram per pound of body weight or more, you're in a surplus. That to me already, that's like most of it.
Absolutely. And you would be surprised, well, maybe not, but the amount of people that don't cover those foundational bases, eating enough calories, eating enough protein, and just the difference that can make for someone's training by itself. I'm not someone where I say diet or training is more important. I just think that they're causally linked, meaning one cannot exist without the other, or one can't thrive without the other, to the best of their ability, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is surprising because I think we get in this bubble and we're like, okay, obviously you're eating enough protein, you're eating enough calories. But, one of the things I talked with Brian Borstein and Abel Chabai about it is like, if you look at it, like some of these studies and it's like, okay, well, this person didn't grow at all, or there's these non-responders or whatever. And to me, it's like, okay, but were they even eating in a surplus? Like, you're going to tell me that you're not responding at all if you ate in a surplus? Like, even like for me, being 18 years into it, if I were to gain a bunch of weight by eating a surplus, I would gain muscle and strength. The whole thing is, would I keep it once I'm back to this body weight, right? But to just not gain at all, it is amazing where you're just like, okay, well, what are you eating? Well, I kind of just eat, until I'm full or something. It's like, well, that probably isn't going to work for most people. But I think we kind of forget that being in this space because we all know it. And anybody listening to this podcast has probably heard it 1,000 times. But if we're talking general population, it's shockingly common.
It really is. And you know what? Things that are self-evident to you and I tend to be the things that we tend to have to reiterate, because I talked about this with Alex Bromley a few weeks ago. There are certain things in strength and conditioning that you have to continue to revisit because there are going to be a continually newer and newer pool of people to whom this is all new to. That there's going to be someone that's never heard, what, I have to eat in a surplus? What's a surplus?
Mm-hmm. Right.
What's a calorie?
Yeah. I think once we step into like actual like general population, it's a totally different pool, which is like, one of the nice things about going back to what we talked earlier, seeing some of you guys blow up, because if you are totally new to this and you just Google like how to get abs or how to lose weight, you're largely going to get like an Athlean X or Greg Doucette or something. And it's nice to see Jeff Nipper is a great resource there. I think he's probably the largest resource that I would really vouch for. I think he's got like 2+ million subs, something like that. But, but to see some of you guys also blowing up is nice, because it's like, hey, that will get out there. It's like finally making like a small dent in that area, and hopefully that continues.
I hope so as well. I really enjoy making content, and I really enjoy just like I said, giving people the tools to be able to help themselves. It gives me a lot of fulfillment, you know, when people say things to me like, "Oh, I used your berserk method," or a piece of advice you gave me in a comment, and my life is way better now, or I'm way stronger now, or whatever. Yeah.
Do you see yourself eventually getting into like just fully coaching? At this point, it sounds like it's part of your income, but do you think you'd ever make like, okay, I'm just a fitness influencer coach kind of guy?
I'm at that stage in, I guess, my growth right now where I'm kind of weighing my options in terms of that.
Yeah.
I personal train and you know, off of YouTube as well. But in terms of making like the content creation and the online training and maybe selling a book or something like that, or I don't know what the future holds for me in terms of like the internet stuff. I'm at a crossroads right now. It's something that I'm contemplating. I do know for a fact that I don't want to like make any supplements or anything like that, or partner with any supplement companies. If there's one watching this now, I'm sorry, bro. I don't mean to offend you, but I don't want to work with you. Just because I feel like, although I feel like I'm someone where, you know, I know what I come from and I know, you know, I'm not a sellout. I feel as though partaking in certain types of activities, like working with supplement companies, no offense to anyone that's sponsored by one, but I've seen the downfall more than once with larger channels, I guess is what I'm getting to. And I don't want to put myself on that path personally.
Come back in 2 years for the Butler supplement pack.
Oh, no.
I think, I mean, it is very common. Like you get people who they blow up, they sell the supplement. It's no different than anything else. And it doesn't mean like it's necessarily bad. Like Omar Yusuf had his, I don't even remember what the brand was, but it was basically saying like, here's evidence-based stuff. You can buy it from me. You know, I don't think there's anything unethical about that. I think it was fine. And then obviously on the other extreme, you have like, again, this whole like testosterone fad stuff going on right now and everything. I think in general, though, and this is a problem with fitness as a whole, it's very hard to be objective. Like I think it was Natural Hypertrophy that doesn't even monetize his channel, maybe. But in general, I think it's hard when you have income tied to it to be totally objective, right? So if that's fitness content, if that's supplements, again, like, are you really going to be objective? I think it's hard. And it's not to say like, I mean, we all are going to have our bias. Whatever you do for work, you're going to have a bias towards that of you know, selling yourself and whatnot. But I think the more somebody gets into that, the harder it is to be completely biased. So I think it's good that while you're more objective, you can kind of come up with these rules for yourself. Okay, I know I'm not going to go there, right? Whatever there is for the individual.
Absolutely. It's all about boundaries. You know, how would you feel if you did this? You know, if you can sleep with that at night, it's probably a good path for you to go down. But if you wouldn't necessarily feel the best about that personally, there's absolutely nothing wrong, in my opinion, with not going that route, no matter what, you know, amount of money is attached to it. Because as you said, it's hard to be objective when, like, all right, you're selling a supplement that you don't even use or care about, but you make $1 million a year from it. Are you really going to be super objective? Or are you really going to have a big hang up about it? It would take a very, you know, strong-willed, objective individual to be able to say, stuff doesn't work, I'm not selling it anymore, and just leave all that money alone.
Right. Yeah. So I don't think I mentioned some of your stats before. I'm curious, how old are you?
27.
27. So I feel like that's like a very good age to kind of get into it, because it's like, okay, you've worked for however many years, but it's not like you're past the point where it's like, okay, I can't really get into that. Like you basically have that option now of like, if you really enjoy it, you can stick with it and blow up from there. Not that I mean, at this point, you have a larger channel than I do. I would say if I have any thoughts or advice on it, it would be probably to keep some other source around for a while, because I definitely do see it happen that people think like this is going to be all I do. And either it doesn't end up working out. Not that I would say it wouldn't work with you, but more like it doesn't last as long. You know, the people in like fitness, it's oftentimes like a kind of like short window. and then things kind of like fizzle out. But also, and this I can speak from experience, if you have something else you're doing, it often keeps it fresher. Like I really like that I have the podcast and Instagram and all of that, but I also like that it's not what I do 40 hours a week. It's something that for me, at least, it's nice to have both sides. And not everybody's like that, but just my experience is it's really nice to be able to say, hey, if it's annoying me, I can just shut the laptop screen or turn off my phone for a little bit and go back to the quote unquote real world. You know what I mean?
That's really sound advice. I appreciate that. And when I look back and I think about some of the larger channels of the past era that still have a lot of subscribers and a lot of followers, and look at the amount of views that they get now versus then.
Right.
All this stuff is going to come to an end at some point, or have its peak and then its valley as well. So that's really sound advice. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and a lot of people, they transition to somebody else. Again, like not trying to call out Omar, but if you look at it, at one point, he was one of the biggest fitness channels. And by number of subscribers, he still is. But I think he's largely switched to like apparel at this point. I think he puts out a video like once a month or maybe not even that much. But Mark Lobliner is another example, right? He's got 400 and some thousand followers or subscribers on YouTube. His average video maybe gets like a couple thousand views, and it's just because a lot of those people, like they fade away, right? So you got to, I think, kind of take the opportunity when you have it. But like I said, you can transition. There's another guy who's I don't know how long you've been watching like YouTube fitness.
Since I was a wee lad.
Okay,
so
long
the
time.
Hodge twins,
Okay,
Brandon Carter.
Yeah. Who am I thinking of? Who natural, strong guy, went to powerlifting, and then he like officially got off YouTube. Kind of baby face.
Johnny Candido?
No, although I do see him pop in and out. I'm like totally blanking. I'll remember later. Strong guy. And I can like literally picture him right now. He kind of looks like a Jonas brother, if that helps.
Is it Silent Mike?
No, although I forgot about Silent Mike. Yeah, he's still doing some stuff, but I'll remember. I'm sure when we start talking about it. But anyway,
I hate when stuff's on the tip of my tongue and then I forget.
Yeah, but he put out a video. I think it was close to a year ago, basically saying like, and I could respect this because he was basically like, all right, like I'm done with YouTube. Like this has been a great journey. He put out like a final video of all the stuff that he had done along the way. But he was like, all right, like I'm officially done. And I actually respect that because sometimes you do see it where it's almost kind of sad where somebody's like, all right, guys, I'm back. And then they're back for like 2 videos and then you don't hear from them for months. And then it's like, okay, I'm back. And they get motivated for a little bit. And it's almost like kind of sad to watch it just kind of to fade like that. But he did it for like 10 years. But I think like there's always going to be some avenue for it, depending on how you handle it. And again, I think with an approach like yours, where it's not like, hey, I'm going to try to, like you said, max out on supplements and then I'm out. People aren't going to stop listening to what you have to say the same way that like I'm guessing Jeff Alberts from 3DMJ, if you know.
Yes.
Him. He's 36 years into this, right? And I just had a podcast with him 2 or 3 days ago, and like people are still listening to that message. So I think it's the difference between having like a message like that versus just hyping up something.
Absolutely. It's like the difference between being somewhere for a good time versus a long time,
Right.
Quick money ain't always good money, y'all.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess for people who are listening who are new to you, would you say that you have principles that have gotten you more motivated to start? Because it looks like you had a pretty good response to lifting, like, good physique, you're strong. That was something I for me, it took a long time to even get to that point where I looked like I lifted. But do you have advice for people who are, let's say 0 to like 2 years in, who maybe they're not at the point where they want to get a coach, or, obviously they could, but they're kind of struggling with that phase of you're putting all this work, you don't look like you lift yet. I think that could be the hardest part for some, where you're just not there yet. You're like, I'm doing all this work just to look average at best.
That's a great question. So if I were to put myself back in those shoes to where I first started off, one thing that I really focused on personally that really just helped me become, okay with what I was doing and the progress that I was making was focusing, one, on rep quality, like making sure that my form is good, and there's a standardization of how I'm doing stuff, and I'm not just putting weight on the bar because I'm letting my form go to shit. And then just accepting the incremental progress when it came, and then kind of just becoming involved in the process of putting those extra 5-10 pounds on the bar and adding more volume to my training, like doing an extra set this week and then adding 5 pounds, and however I went about putting weight on the bar. And eventually, and it'll be different for everybody because everybody responds to like strength type of training differently. You're going to reach a point where you're strong enough to where you look like you lift. Also knowing when it's time to cut as well. If you're at a higher body fat percentage than you'd like say, for example, you bench 225 for a few reps, you can squat 275 for a few reps and deadlift like 350 for a few reps. You're going to have a decent amount of muscle on average, but you're chubbier than you would like. A lot of times it's not that you don't have that muscle. It's just you've now accumulated so much body fat that you can't see it. I guess my biggest piece of advice would be more process oriented. You're going to like the results that you get eventually. It really does take time. I've been training for a long time myself, not always like strength training. Like I started off running and calisthenics and not any like barbell training for the better part of 4 years, but I've been doing some type of training for over 10. And, I am where I am now in terms of physique and strength, and it really does just take time.
How long have you been barbell training?
20. I'm trying to remember the first day I walked into this LA Fitness. It would have been that long ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
Barbell training. So, and I really only have been barbell training, I would say, with a good level of competency for about 3 or 4 of those 6 years. So maybe I have slightly better than normal genetics for it.
I'd say so.
Because like I said, a large portion of my training when I started off, if I can talk about this a little bit, was like long distance running. I don't know if it was like actually long distance, but for me, like 15 miles was long. It was a nice little trot.
Sounds long to me.
I did a lot of calisthenics as well. So that was like almost half of my 10 years of training.
Wow. Yeah, man. I mean, shoot, if you're putting up those numbers with, depending on how you look at it, like 3 years of really quality training and 5 or 6 years of like total barbell training, I mean, that's fantastic, dude. And that, in my experience, like, some people try to be like, oh, it's all done in 5 years. In my experience, it's going to be mostly there in 7 to 8 years. But I think as a natural, like, you're still progressing up to about 10 years or so, so you said you did was it 370 Larson press, or how much was it?
370.
Yeah. I mean, dude, you could easily at some point be hitting a 405. Like, that's awesome.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. So where can people find more of your stuff, man? Obviously you're on YouTube, you're on Instagram there. We'll put links to everything for you there, but anywhere else?
That's it.
That's it. All right, man. Any closing remarks, or you think we got kind of covered it?
Well, I appreciate you for your time. I really had a lot of fun with our discussion. And then for everyone that tuned in, I appreciate you as well.
Awesome, man. Thanks again.
Thanks.